Catherine Madden will be with us a little bit later. She represents the Madden planning group that helped us with this endeavor. But Nikki Peters is here, and Kristen Kelly, and Bill Mitchell, and Wendy Weeks. And so if you remember during the process of the inauguration, I mentioned that I reflected back about how our growth management plan worked really well. We set forth at a time when building was overwhelming and the schools were overcrowded, and we sat and worked hard at a growth management plan. And each year we'd take a look at that, and then this year we looked back at from the very inception of it and realized how really well it did work. And so looking now at development of the city and where future growth is going to come from, I think everybody would agree our future growth is going to be with only how many new houses built last year? 37, in comparison to some years where we had 400 and 500 units total. Come on in. I even saved you a seat. In comparison, so you can see that the growth of the city will come through commercial and industrial growth. And so phase one of what do we do with the remaining land that the city has, or the city that people own in the city, what do we do with that? And how can we best maximize that? How will we come up with a plan? So we started, obviously the first thing was, let's get infrastructure to that land. Without infrastructure, there's not very much that you can do with it. We all have a story to tell about that, having land with no infrastructure. So as you remember, part of when the development around Walmart and across the street at Lowe's, when all that development happened, the infrastructure was somewhere down around Willard Street. And part of the agreement was we negotiated getting the infrastructure moved up closer. So water, sewer, all utilities would be supplied. That's done. If you remember, I think it was probably 35 years ago, the city got a grant to lay pipe in the ground on Jungle Road, but it was never tied to anything. So the infrastructure is much closer now. It's a mile closer. And at the end of the day, here we are with the remaining land in that Jungle Road area, which is off of 117 up in that Walmart area. So what our plan does is takes a look at that area and the highest and best use. And the city doesn't own all the land. We own a couple of parcels of property there, but we don't own it all. As you remember, back in the days when Pyramid Mall was going to come, they had it all under control. So there was one developer that had all the property under control, and that worked well. But now, there isn't. There's different owners for different properties, and almost everybody that's there, in fact, everybody who was there during the Pyramid days is still the owner of their property. And some of them were approached, obviously, by the casino people. But since then, we have a couple of projects that have happened in there, and we looked and said, well, at the end of the day, can we get the property owners to work together? And at the end of the day, when this is built, what's it going to look like? And this is where Catherine comes in, just in time.
That's great. Thank you, Mayor. Sure. Switch places? Is this your seat?
Go ahead.
No. Okay. Hello, all. I'm Catherine Madden, Madden Planning Group, and I'm working with the team that includes, I'm an urban planner, and I'm working with the team that includes urban designers, site designers, real estate advisors, and civil engineers. And so we're very lucky to be looking at this site. How do I advance?
I will advance. You just let me know. Okay?
Thank you,
We ready?
Kristen.
All right.
Okay. So we looked at this in a couple ways. We know that we're looking at this site, Jungle Road, but we wanted to step back a little bit and think about the context, especially as we're thinking about the program and what could happen there. And then also looking at the citywide is thinking about what other real estate is happening there, what's the competition for other similar uses. Then going down to the next scale is looking at site constraints and opportunities. It's a really interesting site in terms of what's going on there physically. And then we are going to show some potential concepts of what could happen there, and then happy to take any questions. So next. This is very small, but I will tell you that the highlights is if you look at Leominster, of course, is in North County, but it's part of the, from the census and jobs, it's part of the Worcester metro area, which goes all the way down to Connecticut as well. But if you look at that, no surprise that it is this region is very strong, even looking nationally, it's very strong in plastics, information technology, analytic instruments, electrical equipment, and metalworking. You know, all of these sort of are related issues. Obviously, the metalworking, the plastics, all of these tie together, as well as the wires and cables that are prevalent. So there's a really strong base for that in the economy, and it's a competitive advantage that this area has over other parts of the state and even nationally. Next. But we also want to look ahead. We know, like, you know, we've been doing this work for a long time, the work that, you know, jobs that happen in Leominster, but we also want to look at what's going on in other places. There are, you know, medical devices is a very, you know, big industry, you know, that's related to this plastics industry. Additive manufacturing, 3D printing, which is used more for kind of innovation and testing out new ideas. Looking at entrepreneurial, like maker spaces where people explore new ideas, and then rapid prototyping. And when we toured some of the factories, it was interesting that they actually, you know, some of the owners, actually, I want to first say everyone was innovating. Like there was always some sort of tinkering and exploring and looking at new prototypes. Some expressed like a 3D print, you know, a place where we could test ideas would be helpful. So some of this could be ways of thinking about the existing industries and how they innovate in the future. Next. And then we wanted to look at like where Leominster sits, so which is the red square kind of in the middle of the screen, where Jungle Road sits, actually, I want to say. And then those arrows approximate 40 minutes out, kind of a drive time. And one of the things I had heard was Leominster, you can tell me if I'm right or wrong, always looks east to west on Route 2. I will tell you, I came up from Worcester just now, and the highway is very empty coming up. A lot of capacity in 190 there. So, you know, thinking about the relationship of especially that Jungle Road site to connections down to Worcester, to the businesses, and even around to 495, so that you start to think of this bigger network of jobs and opportunities, especially in innovation. Next. So looking then of what's going on in Leominster in particular, there are many different industrial parks happening, like Jitech Park, and the other ones near the connector. But they have different levels of marketing. There's large sites that you see off to the right on that drawing that are in Lancaster. So this is some of the competition for land. You know, and what else is being marketed. And those large sites in Lancaster are all assembled, so that's an advantage that they have over Jungle Road, but they don't have sewer and water, as the mayor was pointing out, that having the sewer and water is a very big advantage that we have at Jungle Road. The little chart actually, and I guess you can see it better in your package, points out that most of the industrial buildings in Leominster were built, most of them were built before 1960. So, you know, yeah. So just thinking ahead that, you know, as new technologies, there may be need for new space. What this one then looks at, what is the competition? What are the existing industrial parks? And basically if I have it right, the gray is the total amount of land, the green is what's available, and what you see is places like Jitech Park are totally built out. A lot of the spaces are totally built out. And Devon's, while Devon still has available land, but at this point it is also sort of nearing completion. So there's an opportunity for Jungle Road then to be a place where there could be large footprint manufacturing happening that is not available in some of the other sites within Leominster. And the other thing that we found when we looked at all the industrial buildings in the city is that most of them are under 25,000 square feet. There is a predominance of very small shops that are happening. And actually, one of the newer buildings that is on Jungle Road is 100,000 square feet, is one of the biggest, one of the bigger buildings. And of course, it goes up as much as the 500,000 square feet, which is, yeah, AIS, thank you. Okay. So let's talk about the site. Okay, luckily you can see this in your package. So the blue outline is the Jungle Road area, as we've defined it, from Old Mill Road to the highway, to the town line, really, the town line to the east and south, and then the railroad track on the west. So it's a pretty defined area. There's a electric line easement that runs through the middle of it that kind of chops up some of the land. It leaves that band between the easement and the railroad that is not that easy to develop. And then at the south part, everything that's in pink, those are your wellheads. This is a really important resource for the city. This is to protect because the value of the water, and there are restrictions on what can happen in that area, and that is land that the city does own. It's very, very protected on the most southernmost properties, and then some conservation easements on the band in the middle. You also see wetlands in there. Everything's kind of flowing down to the Nashua River to the east, and then the red in the middle. I think we had every kind of configuration on this site, really. It's like a case study. Most of the site is sand and gravel, like outwash and lake deposits, so easy to move around. That's why you see so many gravel pits in that area. But that red in the center is rock. It's bedrock, and that is also being mined as gravel, kind of being scraped away for gravel. So a lot of different physical conditions going on there. Next. And this, the topography is quite steep in places. That is less of an issue where it's sand and gravel on the whole sort of eastern side of the site, as opposed to that rock in the middle that is really kind of formidable. And all of this affects, so if one of the things we're looking at is this a site for large footprint manufacturing, which is having a hard time as companies grow and want to expand, they're having a hard time finding a site in Leominster to stay. I think they're feeling mostly devoted to staying in Leominster, but only if they can find those properties. So those site constraints make it a little bit of a challenge that we were working with to find where can we, how can we locate these. So a couple ideas around the program concepts is ways to think about manufacturing both kind of small, those smaller 25,000 kind of square foot workshops that you see on the lower right, with places for collaboration, as well as some of the larger footprint buildings that have the utilitarian in the back, spaces in the back, but often have office components in the front. And that's what we see in the existing buildings in Leominster as well. Next. But we also think this site, if you think about some of the power actually of Devon's is that campus quality and the mix of uses. And we think there's, especially with where the Lowe's and the Walmart, where that entrance and the investment that the city and the state have made in that intersection, that there's an opportunity to have other uses that support and complement the manufacturing, and also thinking about the residential that's on Old. There's opportunities to have a hotel in that area. Excuse me, a hotel in that area that has visibility from the highway and is close to 117, not right on 117, but close. You can think about live-work studios for some of the smaller manufacturing, innovative office, and recreation. It really is beautiful woods. For those of you who've been out there, it's quite lovely between some of the gravel pits. It's really beautiful New England woods. And then finally thinking about the collaborative spaces. So places, and some of the manufacturing businesses that we visited talked about this. They have clients that are coming in from either nationally or even internationally. They need a place to stay. There's a desire, to have places to eat, to collaborate. So thinking both about food, thinking about classrooms. Maybe in the long run there's opportunities for the community college to have some space here, maker space, places to gather is some of what we're thinking about that can build that notion of a place and a campus for innovation. So then looking at the plan, even with all those site constraints, there is a potential 800,000, 1 million square feet. I mean, there is a lot of room for development, including the existing buildings. So thinking about the existing manufacturing as really kind of what we're wanting to build on. Those are people who are doing innovative things within their businesses. And then looking at a range of different business sizes and types. The way we've laid this out, it could proceed in phases. It might be helpful to assemble some of the properties, but we were specific in not wanting to be held up by that. So it could proceed in phases. And this, of course, you'll see some of the details here, but talking about the gateway at Old Mill and Jungle Road, that this is really important. The businesses also spoke to this in terms of wanting this a better presence as they come in. So the hotel, some of the live work, or possibly a restaurant. And then, you know, I think what's important, it's a single road, is looking at trying to get a loop road. We were looking at, you know, and all of this is illustrative because the city doesn't own this property. Some of it is showing the property owners what the value of the properties are. But one notion is taking the DPW from the site up at Old Mill Road and moving it over toward the railroad track here, which takes advantage of that space, and it could also then kind of become the gatekeeper to the wells, which, you know, are important to really protect that resource. So the notion of investing in the streets and maybe some recreational facilities, and then zooming in a little is just so the building at the far south there is. It's 300,000. I'm sorry I don't have my notes right with me, but I'm thinking it's 300,000. So it's a fairly large footprint, larger than most in Leominster. And then you can see that there's some opportunities for some smaller scale manufacturing, including expanding some of the existing buildings, and then that cluster of more walkable placemaking up at Old Mill and Jungle Road. And thinking even that the residents of the residents there on Old Mill, that it might also be something where they could walk to and take advantage of those amenities. So some of the things to think about, and the advantage of water and sewer, the advantage this site has of interstate access, especially compared to some of your other sites in Leominster. It's very close to Devon's, it's close to Worcester. There is some potential for large footprint. We do have good city leadership. All the manufacturers talked about that. It's a very business-friendly community. It is already zoned industrial. Some of the challenges are that it is fragmented ownership. I've just raised whether Jungle Road, one of the business owners asked about talked about how that affected his business, talking with other people, but that's something for you all to think about. It's not exactly on 117. It does have the single point of access, and there are some physical constraints. And it's not, I mean, building manufacturing is an important use within the city. It's not something that one would speculate and build just, it's more, I think we're thinking more build to suit for a business that wants to especially grow and expand within the city. And then this last one just, you know, shows the property ownership and the topography and looks at kind of what we were, some of the challenges we were up against in coming up with these concepts. Happy to take questions, comments.
The last thing I was going to say is, if you remember the whole mixed-use development part of the project, and now with Reliant Medical Care and all of the other things, and Central Mass Oral, all fits into the overall picture. And we did some planning that didn't just happen, and we worked with the developers. We were lucky the developers went along with that. They didn't have to. With this plan, even if we don't, or one developer doesn't secure the whole site, at least there's an opportunity for us to at least show them there's a plan and maybe how they can best position those buildings so that the front office space is what is in the landscape and is what you see from the street. And the manufacturing part is situated towards the back of the property. But that's all with positioning. And you can't do that when you have multiple owners if you don't have some sort of plan. So even if not one person comes in and secures it all, or if not everybody has the same idea about what they want to do with their property, at least there's a master plan now to show them the overall concept of what that project would look like when it was complete. And we're in discussions right now, early discussions with a hotel. And this is a perfect opportunity for us to show them this area and to show them this plan, but also to show them where we would want them to position the hotel. So it fits in not only with Jungle Road, but the entire area that we see down there is that mixed-use development project that we started so many years ago. Okay, I'm sorry, Councilor Dombrowski.
Oh, I just had a question. There was mention of an easement. I was wondering what the nature of the easement was.
Is power
It
easement?
seems to cut through the entire length of the
Yeah, it's a,
site, yeah.
I'm sorry, is it Instar here or?
I
Electric.
think it's an Mass Electric.
Mass Electric.
It's an electric. it's
They're
a
power lines,
Oh, okay.
and it is quite permanent. You know, you're able to cross it grade underneath it, but not build
Right,
underneath it.
right, okay.
It's very popular with dirt bike right now.
Have you had conversations with the owners already? And is good I mean, in fairness to them, they've been through, you know, the Pyramid Mall, they were offered such inflated numbers for their property that it was kind of hard to get them back down to reality, but I think they wait till the 11th hour when the ink is dry before they believe that something's actually gonna happen. But they're receptive.
Yeah,
the
one
most
of the
part?
things we did do before we even designed this plan, Catherine and the group, we went on a tour of a few of the industrial facilities to get some input from the local community to figure out what they thought they needed out of this area. It was amazing to see the innovation we have in industry right now and what they need. Is IMA, for instance, develops line machines for industrial manufacturers from Europe. And so they fly a whole team of people out here, set up the machinery, run it for a week, and then before they test it, complete it, and send it back to Europe. So one of the things they need is someplace for those people to stay for the week. And another one, EarthPack talked about having clients out from California and putting them up somewhere. Right now, they're sending them all to Worcester because it's, you know, it's close by. So having that, they all expressed the need for a hotel, which gave us an opportunity to create that entrance to Jungle Road and create a new look and not just the old industrial manufacturing, you know, park look to it. It's innovative, it's live, work, play. They have a hotel there, you have a couple of amenities, maybe a restaurant or shop or something like that there, and then it allows a mix of spaces, like Catherine said, a 300,000 square foot anchor type industry towards the back end of Jungle Road and maybe some other ones in the beginning. But working with them, and then when we met with the owners, they all seemed very receptive to the plan. We're somewhat excited about it, and of course, you know, they have apprehension a little bit, and they want to see, but at least they have a direction, and they were pretty open to the idea. So if the city has inquiries, like we do now with a hotel or another industry or a manufacturing facility, now we can direct them to either the Durkin property or the Leominster Materials property, depending on what they're looking for. And they already know and they've seen this plan, so they're aware of it, and now they're more on board to marketing their property to this facility. So it seems like it's going to be a good idea.
As you said, Mayor, the fact that it's already started, you know, with the Walmart, with Reliant, I mean, it's not just a thought now. They can see that something's actually being done. So I think it's a good plan.
Yeah, I mean, you look at Central Mass Oral, they did a beautiful job down there. That's a $2 million project down there. I mean, that's a huge, in Reliance, a multi-story building, and more to come. We get inquiries all the time. But remember, at the end of the day, when we set forth on this mission of limiting growth in the city, you're down to your commercial industrial growth. That's where your growth's going to come from. If you don't have a plan, and we can market the city, but if you don't have a plan and a concept plan as to what it is that you want to do and the kinds of businesses you want to bring, and if you bring them what, you know, where they'll go and what you have to offer, then you really don't have anything. You have land, and you can hire real estate people, but at the end of the day, there's no overall plan. And so this just fits in with it. As I said, the second phase of the plan was getting the infrastructure. That took a long time to get that infrastructure because we did most of it with grants. We have the infrastructure. Now we have concept plans. And just as we did with the landfill, if anybody comes in now that has an idea about what to do with the landfill, we have a concept plan. We can show them engineered drawings. We can show them the work that we've done, how we built the landfill, so that you can build on top of the landfill. Rather than scaring these people away, now we have a plan. And that's going to go out through the whole city, so that, you know, we have those tools in our toolbox, so when they come here, we're prepared. The next stage of this is obviously the marketing part. We've got to get this message out. We've got to let people know that we have a plan, that we have land, infrastructure ready, shovel ready, enterprise zones, and all the necessary things that you need to do to get a project moving. Nobody wants to wait years anymore to get a project going. They want to purchase the land, they want to close on it, they want to have their architects and engineers come in, and they want to get moving.
Any other questions? Council Cormier?
Yeah, thank you. So this plan that we're talking about now, is that incorporating any of the, 60-some-odd acres that are way, way, way in the back, or are we just talking about the front?
No, that's all the property that's
All of it.
left down there.
E-
That includes
every-
the wells, the Durkin property where they do the sand preparation. It includes everything.
But it's protecting the wellheads.
Right,
Right.
right. There's no development around the
Right.
wellheads.
Because there's really kind of a dividing line there where the wetlands, just where Kristen's pointing, it's wetlands anyway, and then it's wellhead, so it kind of makes a natural break. But it's a fair amount of space that you can develop even with all those constraints, 1 million square feet, 800 to 1 million square feet.
Any other questions? Thank you.
As we talk about the incubator part of this all, the next phase, and I said this at the last time we met, the next biggest piece of anything is going to come not so much in the area of education, but in training. There are not enough people to fill the jobs. I just came from my MassDOT meeting. There are not enough people to fill the jobs at MBTA, MassDOT. These are good jobs for people. If you look at the new stimulus bill, the new sort of President Trump's stimulus bill, a huge part of that is set aside for training. There's an opportunity here for us to bring all of this together with a training center that works with the schools, works in the region, works with the colleges in the region, works with Devon's, works with everyone to have one facility where it's one flexible, multi-integrated training center that everybody can use. There are not, as jobs, as I said last time, as automation or robotics take over, yes, you need some people to do those segments of the business. You need coding people. You need people who are going to program. But at the end of the day, they're replacing jobs. They're replacing other jobs, and there are going to be empty jobs in places that we haven't trained people for yet. And the big thing now, as I've said in the past, is homegrown. Businesses are hiring people who have the good qualities of a good worker, and they're training them inside. They're sending them out for education, but training them inside. This is a perfect opportunity. Nobody has the ingredients and all of the tools in the toolbox that one needs to put this kind of a facility together. And as that money becomes available, as we start talking about this sort of stimulus, this construction money, this fact that by 2025, many jobs will be obsolete. We're in that perfect position, right between Boston, right between Worcester, and we didn't have to lead them in any particular direction. They found this out on their own. They were free to go out and do all of this work and find it all out. What we knew is now quantified. Now we have a plan.
Thank you. We appreciate you coming down
Sure.
this evening, also your guest as well. Have a nice evening. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Bill, can you break down that overhead? Thank you.
Get the light out of your eyes there.
Thank you.
Good here.
Lynn, we can start the hearing. Clay Park.
This here?
Yeah. We can start. We can have the superintendent right now, that's why.
Start this. He's gonna get paid, but he can't do anything tonight.
Okay, all right.
Planning hasn't had this.
How do we get this thing out without killing ourselves? Oh, killing ourselves. Do we have a concussion protocol? Like the NFL? Oh, yeah. John, start that hearing, please.
Okay, this is a hearing before the Leominster City Council. Petition 14-18, John P. Bulger and Dorothy Rulo and 10 registered voters. Rezone the following parcels on Pleasant Street and Low Street from Residence B to Residence A, as amended at the City Council meeting on January 22nd, 2018. Pleasant Street West Side, map 481, lots 19 and 20. Map 521, lot 1 and 39. Map 488, lots 1, 5, 6, 7, 8. Map 494, lots 18, 3A, 31A, 32A, 32B, and 32C. Pleasant Street East Side, map 561, lots 35A, 36A, 37A. Map 340, lots 1 and 2. Map 410, lots 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 22, and 23. Map 496, lots 1, 2, 3, and 7. And Low Street, map 488, lot 5. I think before I go to the council, I would open this up to the public. Is there anyone in the public who wishes to speak in favor of this petition? Second time, is there anyone who wishes to speak in favor of this petition? Third and final time, does anyone in the public wish to speak in favor of this petition? Does anyone in the audience wish to address the council in opposition to this petition? Second time, does anyone wish to address the council in opposition? Third and final time, does anyone wish to address the council in opposition to this petition? Okay. A couple of matters. We did have a subcommittee meeting where we discussed not necessarily the merits of this, but some of the procedural issues. One item that came up is whether we could ask the city clerk to have each property owner served by certified mail.
Right,
Is that something that can be done?
we can.
Okay,
It'll come out of our budget,
okay,
yeah.
all right. I think that's just to comply with, I think there's an argument whether or not this falls under that new ordinance that we passed,
Right.
but just to be on the safe side,
We'll
we'd like
take
to
care of
comply with that. The other issue is there's a planning board hearing the beginning of March, correct? So I think we're gonna have to continue this public hearing until after the planning board hearing,
Right, they have them, there's March 5th.
March 5th,
March 12th.
March 12th, okay. So having said all that, are there any counselors who have any questions or have any comments at this time? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing for
Nope,
tonight, continue
Just
it.
continue it.
Yep, we'll continue it to March 12th, 7 o'clock PM. Thank you,
Thank you.
Mr. President.
Thank you very much.
Yep.
Superintendent, you ready to join us? Feel free to bring in any members of the school committee that would like to join us as well. Please, thank you, thank you. I'd like to welcome the members I can see from here. I can't see everyone, so if you can help me out, I know that members of the school committee that are joining us here tonight, I see Susan Kohler. Did I see Sue?
No.
No, I didn't, I'm sorry. Nona Ojala's over there. Michael, thank you.
Come on in.
We have Ronnie Hool.
Isabel?
Isabel's here as well, thank you. Anyone else?
Michael Stassen?
Michael C. Assassin, thank you. Hey, grab a chair out of the room. There you go. I thought I saw no one. Okay, so first of all, this is historic. Thank you for being here tonight in such a collaborative way. We really appreciate it. Superintendent, it's kind of like your inauguration to the council chamber, so I'd like to welcome you on behalf of the members of the council and appreciate you accepting the opportunity to come down here from Councilor Shalfo Zephyr. So you basically set the agenda, and tonight you can share with us whatever you'd like. If any counselors have any questions, they can contact you directly.
Yes, please.
We're not gonna get into, some of the questions that we might have, but you might be able to shed some light on issues that we want to talk to you about offline here.
Sure.
And then I'm gonna turn the floor over to the chairwoman of the school committee, Councilor Shalfo Zephyr. Go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Councilor Marchand. Thank you very much, Superintendent, for coming down, and I really appreciate all of the support that you brought with you, all of the school committee members. That's really nice. We have wanted to, first of all, I'm the chair of the Public Schools Committee on the City Council. Councilor David Cormier is the clerk of the committee, and Councilor Gail Feckley is our third member. So that's our committee. And my hope is to establish and maintain an ongoing dialogue with you, with people on the school committee, just so we can share information, we can answer questions, we can be supportive in any way that we can. And we just want to understand things, as much as we can in advance of the budget process. And again, we want to be helpful. So thank you very much for coming down, and I'll just turn it over to you.
Thank you, and I do appreciate this. Good evening. For those of you that I haven't met directly, my name is Paula Deacon, and as of today is my 3-month anniversary as interim superintendent. And for some reason, I feel like I'm in the principal's office. I have to say, as I look around the room, not only do we have the school committee here, we have parents, we have students, we have building admin, teachers. This is remarkable. And this, I have to say, if you know anything about me, I'm passionate about education. And what's in the room tonight supports that. We have been working feverishly to bring some stability to Leominster Public Schools. I'm here tonight with positive intentions and truly looking to build positive partnerships. I had an experience last week that, as a teacher, you always hope to not only teach and have students learn, but almost have a physical reaction to something that you've said. Sort of that guttural or that moment that will be an anchor experience. And last week I was at a conference, and the facilitator said to everyone in the room, and there were all sorts of stakeholders, he said, you need to be clear when you're speaking in the community that the students and the children of any district, they impact everybody. It's not the school department's issue. It's not the parents' issue. It's the city's issue. Our children are everywhere in this city. They're on our sidewalks, they're in our stores, they're in our grocery stores, in our restaurants, in cars, making decisions every single day, which impact everything that we do. So as a leader, I want to use my voice to lead Leominster to be passionate about education again and be champions for education. So with that being said, I feel so proud tonight to have the people around me that I do. We've been very busy looking at our enrollment. You hear numbers all the time. Leominster is growing. We're being impacted daily. We have brought in over 300 students since October 1st. We are working with the Department of Education to look for funding, additional funding, so that we do support children, not just adequately, but appropriately, and make our students exemplars for Leominster. We continue to look at programming, reallocation, grants, whatever it's going to take to not just be an adequate district. And so tonight, we have an example of that. We're here to honor a teacher in the district, Francine Miggs from Samoset, and I'm very gracious in the fact that she humbles me. What she does above and beyond her daily duties and her home life and trying to keep things balanced has been noticed by the community, so much so that her acting building principal, who has also stepped in, she came out of retirement to help us out 3 months ago. We're a moving target right now. But she would actually like to say a few words about Francine.
Thank you for having us here tonight. We're all very grateful to be here and to help celebrate someone who personifies what it means to be a dedicated teacher. Francine is a relentless advocate for her students, a couple of whom are here, for the Samoset school community, but also for the city of Leominster.
So it's really a special honor to have her here, just to be recognized in front of all of you. I just wanted to read you a quick overview of what the grant was about that she had achieved for us. Samoset Middle School was selected to receive a $1,500 Martin Luther King Day Impact School Grant by the Youth Serve America, and that was in November of this school year. Youth Serve America awarded 40 grants across the United States. However, in Massachusetts, there were only 2 grants, and that was one to Canton High School and one to Samoset Middle School. So we were very, very glad that Francine put that effort in and that we received that. The first service project was a school-wide book drive, and that was held in January to honor Martin Luther King's legacy through service. During that drive, we collected 3,300 books, and they were distributed throughout the city to many agencies, also to Hanscom Airfield, to their learning center, and then to Crocker Elementary, because they had lost so many books in a fire not too long ago. There is a second part to this grant, and that is a service day that's a global service day, and that's in April. And on that day, they will be making no-sew blankets and distributing them throughout the city to different agencies. Excuse me. I think Francine would like you to think that these activities would have been successful without her, or if anybody else had run them, but all of us know that it's because of her and because of her tireless effort that they are as successful as they are. So I'd like to introduce you to Francine Meigs.
I really don't know what to say. I think being part of the community and engaging students in civic engagement is really important. I really enjoy working alongside the students, working cooperatively and collaboratively with them, and also working with my peers and helping the community. And I hope I've been able to instill that in at least a couple students along the way. There's some wonderful students that are sitting behind me right now that gave of their time towards this book drive, and without their efforts, I don't think it would have been as successful as it was. And several of them are looking forward to the next part of the drive, not the drive, but the no-sew blanket day in April. And I hope I can, until I decide to retire, continue to keep giving back to the community.
Thank you. Can you join me, please? Thank you. This is the Vice President. And on behalf of the City Council, for your role in Samoset Middle School's award of the Martin Luther King Day of Service Impact School Grant and the commitment you provide to your students and encouragement service to others, I'd like to present you with this citation. Superintendent, you have the floor again.
So that's that feeling I was talking about. That's the reaction. She just whispered over to me, "Thank you." And I think as we start to move forward in, we're going down a budget process. We're just starting that process right now. We're here as a team. We're about transparency. We're about commitment, but we're also about celebration, and that's a celebration. So I thank you for your time this evening.
Thank you. Council?
Right, just one question.
Yes.
Now, tomorrow night, is there a finance committee meeting?
There is.
Okay. To talk.
6:30 at Appleseeds.
And the agenda is?
We are beginning the process. We need to set calendars, schedule presentations, budget hearings. All of it will be posted. Last Monday night at school committee, we began gathering our finance documents, which we will make sure are out and publicized at the public library. They're already posted on our website, so communication will be ongoing.
That's great. I think it's important for the public to know that, just so that they can get involved and they
Yes.
can pay attention early in the process and get their
Early.
questions answered. So
Yes.
thank you very much.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Thank you for coming down this
Thank you.
evening.
We really appreciate
Thank you.
that.
Council has a little break now till 7:15.
put that on the agenda for
No one? Okay, all right. That's the worst one. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. The public forum is an opportunity for any member of the audience to speak on any matter specifically listed on the council agenda. Speakers will be asked to come to the microphone, state their formal name and address, along with identifying specific items they wish to address. Each speaker is respectfully asked to keep their comments within a 2-minute time frame. The council will not be responding or answering any of the questions. However, at the discretion of the council president, clarification may be given. We don't have anyone signed up for the public forum, but I'll open it up to the floor. Would anyone like to address the council? Come on up. Go ahead.
Tom Kanakia, 315 Joslin Street, Leominster.
Thank you, Mr. Kanaki. What would you like to speak on?
The proposed zoning changes to the lot on Mechanic Street.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I'm requesting that the owner of the 8 lots on Mechanic Street, under consideration for proposed zoning changes, conduct an independent traffic study for further review, quite simply. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Would any other member of the audience like to address the council?
Melissa Bible, 178 Fifth Street. I'm also speaking in concern of the petition 33-18. As a neighbor in the immediate area of the request, I'm concerned about the impact of this zoning change. This area has been recently impacted by the growth of traffic with Cumberland Farms development. Additionally, immediate neighbors on Mechanic Street, 12th and Glendale have not yet been notified. Once zoned commercial, I'm concerned about the type of commercial business that may wish to have ownership or rental in the immediate area off of Route 2. Lastly, I'm very concerned about the impact of additional traffic with the proposed paper road towards American Little League. I request that all neighbors and abutters be formally notified of the proposed zoning change. Additionally, that a traffic study be completed on the direct impact toward neighbors. Also, that input be requested from both American Little League and the Rec Department.
Thank you very much. Would any other member of the audience like to address the council? Second time? Sure.
Holly Kosky, Ringe, New Hampshire. I just wanted to bring up that I've been asking for the finance subcommittee meetings to be televised or have the guys there on Tuesday night and record the meeting. So I just wanted to let you guys know that, and hopefully you can influence it as well, because a lot of us can't attend the meeting. Thank
Okay,
you.
thank you very much. Would any other member of the audience like to address the council? Second time? Third and final call? If not, the public forum is closed. I'll yield the floor to the chairwoman of Ways and Means for an interview.
Thank you, Mr. President. We have Mr. Rodney Shafter here. Shafter.
Save that for next week.
Just want to make sure that your microphone is on.
No name on it.
Can you hear me?
Yes, very well, thank you. Okay, Mr. Shafter, so we spoke briefly during the break, and so my name is Gail Feckley, and I'm the chairwoman of Ways and Means. And the other members are Councilor Frida and Councilor Dombrowski. So what I will do tonight is just kind of ask you a few questions, or we'll make some comments, and then have you introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about your background. We do have your resume, but I'd like you to kind of just put it in your words, and what you feel as though you could contribute to the Cultural Commission.
I look forward to the opportunity.
Okay, so we did have your resume, and it's obviously very, very impressive. You also had given us a very impressive cover letter where you indicate that you were approached by 2 of the members of the Leominster Cultural council about joining, and that you've lived in Leominster since 2000, and you have several children that have gone to Leominster schools, and you have a master's degree in chemistry. But what I thought was very interesting is that you said, while I'm a scientist, I appreciate how much the arts add to the human experience and recognize their importance to the society. So I really, that really stood out to me, because certainly, you know, the arts and the sciences are so closely connected. You know, I work
Indeed, yes.
for a university, and, you know, that's what we teach, liberal arts and sciences. So I certainly feel as though your background, you know, looks like it would be a perfect fit for the Cultural Council. So in any event, now give you the floor. Just give us a little bio, and also what you feel as though you contribute to the committee.
Let's see, I grew up in northern Ohio. My parents were of modest means, so I worked my way through college. I graduated from Cleveland State University with a degree in chemistry, and also went on to get a master's degree in chemistry. I did some additional work at Texas A&M for a few years. My intent was to be a college professor, but you know, seeing how college professors actually, you know, worked at a big school like that, I maybe decided that I would be better off in industry doing hands-on chemistry. I worked in a food testing laboratory for several years. Then I had gotten married by that time. My wife is also a chemist. She works currently at AbbVie in Worcester. I took a job. We moved to Delaware after Texas. I took a job there at an ink company. We made ink for inkjet printers, and a big growth field in that area at that time was in graphic arts printing, where we did wide format for posters and reproduction artwork and the like. And eventually we decided to have children, and since she had a better career opportunity, we felt, so I just became the house husband. I've been Mr. Mom for the last 20 years and have 4 wonderful children, 2 of which are in college, and one's a senior at LHS and one's a freshman. And they've been a joy to raise and teach, and you know, they're getting big, and I'm kind of jealous when I go to the store and see the little kids getting chased around by their parents. I kind of miss those days. And you know, as a scientist, you know, I see the importance of science in society, and you know, and it's so emphasized. You know, all everybody talks about in education is STEM. You know, science, technology, engineering, and math. And you know, science is very good at what science does. You know, but ultimately, it's, you know, just a system for formulating and testing falsifiable hypotheses about observable phenomena. And you know, most of what happens in the human spirit and the human heart, and you know, in our political situation, you know, can't be quantitized. It's not independently observable, and you know, those matters are dealt with through the arts, through, you know, through poetry, through fiction, painting, and you know, and related to that, of course, is history. You know, history is, you know, dependent on your point of view, and but it's, you know, you can't know where you're being, where you go unless you know how you got there. You know, we're not just disembodied points traveling. We have a past that we all share, and understanding that past, you know, is also essential to our society today.
Well, you know, we had the superintendent of schools here tonight, and, you know, we've all fought very hard to make sure that the arts remain in the schools, you know, so this is a very important mission. And, you know, actually one of the missions of the Cultural Commission for the public is they evaluate and award grants funded by the Massachusetts Cultural Council that support the arts, sciences, and humanities to improve and contribute to the diversity of our community. And there's 329 cultural councils in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. So that's a lot of good work that people are doing to maintain, you know, the arts and sciences within our communities. And I feel as though, you know, you would be passionate in that just from that small bit of information that you gave us, so
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah, I attended the fall meetings and saw
Yes.
that process in action and the care that the committee took in apportioning those grants. And I hope that I can bring the same care and commitment to the committee.
Very good. So right now, what I'll do is I'll hand your many questions to Counselor Frida. Do you have any questions or comments? Counselor Dombrowski?
No, just one comment. I've been sitting here for, I don't know, 14 years, and I think that same question or a substantially similar question has been asked to almost every appointee, and I think that's the best answer that I've ever heard.
Thank you.
So welcome aboard. Very happy to have you.
Thank you very much. And I look forward to being able to give back to, to our city, which has, given my family so much over the last 18 years.
Do any other counselors have any questions or comments? Mr. Shafter? Counselor Bedanza?
Yeah, I got to know Mr. Shafter over the last several years in different contexts, and I'm very confident that he'll do a tremendous job for the Cultural Commission, and thank you for volunteering.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Any other counselors? Counselor Arden?
Mr. Shafter through Scouts for probably close to 10 years now, 10, 12 years, and watching him in his volunteer duties with the Scouts, makes him an exemplary person to hold a position with the Cultural Commission. I think he'll do a great job. He's just fantastic. He really worked hard at what he does.
Well,
thank you.
Seems I've got some very high praise from some of our councils and also from members of the council already.
Yes.
That means a lot. So thank you very much for coming, Mr. Shafter, and I will be very pleased to recommend your appointment to the Cultural Council. And we'll ask the president to move the appointment up, so if you wanted to wait for the vote, you can.
Okay, thank
All
you very
right?
much.
All right, thank you.
Have a
Thank
good
you for
evening,
coming.
everyone.
Pages are on. Page 7.
John, did you plant your garden today? Beautiful out. Too early? I think so. Yeah, I know. It's great weather, huh? It's amazing.
Oh. Oh, jealous.
Did you get some? Yeah, I know. I don't even want to look now that you mention it. Yeah. 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 Is this clock kind of in sync with Verizon?
This one?
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. The regular scheduled meeting for the City Council of February 12th is now in session. Please stand and join me to salute to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We'll begin the meeting with a roll call vote, beginning with Counselor David Cormier.
Present.
Counselor Pauline Cormier.
Present.
Counselor Arndinger.
Present.
Counselor Bonanza.
Present.
Counselor Feckley, Vice
Present.
President. Thank you.
Present.
Counselor Shalfo Zephyr.
Present.
Counselor Dabrowski, we got you here. Okay, good. Counselor Frida,
Present.
we're all here, all night. Thank you. Thank you very much. I've got a little flu, a little bit of a temperature, so I may have to make a correction from time to time during the agenda. I apologize for that, but we'll see how it plays out. Okay, we begin with we begin with the approval of the minutes. Madam Vice President, are you ready?
Yes, Mr. President, I have the minutes of the City Council meeting of January 22nd, 2018, and I find them to be in order and ask that they be placed on file.
Thank you. Are there any questions on the minutes? If not, thank you very much. We'll now move on to communications from the mayor, beginning with Communication 37.
C-37, relative to the appropriation of $13,175 to the Sealer of Weights and Measures Salary and Wages account, same to be transferred from the stabilization fund.
Communication 37 is referred to the Chairman of Finance.
Yes, Mr. President, first time on the calendar. Regular course, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Regular course on C-37. Communication 38.
C-38, relative to the appropriation of $75,000 to the Police and Fire Indemnification Expense account, same to be transferred from the stabilization fund.
Communication 38 is referred to the Chairman of Finance.
Yes, Mr. President, same situation. Regular course, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Regular course on C-38. We'll now move on to petitions. First time on the calendar, beginning with 31-18.
3118, we're gonna need to add Counselor Shalfo Zephyr's name to this. She was at this meeting where this, but she just didn't get a chance to sign it. So it's gonna be Richard Marchand, David Cormier, Gail Feckley, John Dombrowski, Claire Frieda, Susan Shalfo Zephyr. Amend Chapter 16-34 of the revised ordinances of the City of Leominster to change the classification of the city clerk assistant from S5 to S7 in the city clerk from S9 to S10, effective July 1st, 2018.
31-18 is referred to the Chairwoman of Ways and Means. I'm going to ask you for an amendment and then action.
Yes, Mr. President, we will amend 3118 to include Susan Shalafo Zephyr as a sponsor.
I need a second.
I'll second that.
Thank you. Councilor Cormier, second. Are there any questions or comments on the floor? If not, all those in favor of the amendment, please indicate in the usual manner. Those opposed, as amended, refer to the Chairwoman of Ways and Means.
Thank you, Mr. President. First time on the calendar, regular course.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. 32-18.
3218, R.S. Lucia Construction Corporation, accept the deed for Sawtell Road for public way and utility purposes.
32-18 is referred to the Chairman of Legal Affairs.
Thank you, Mr. President. First time on the calendar, regular course, with a referral to the mayor, the assessor, the treasurer, and the city solicitor. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. 32-18 has been given regular course, and before I complete the referrals, if I could yield the floor to Councilor Cormier.
I just want to go back to 31-18. I believe that's legal affairs. That's ordinance.
Okay, if we can address that in 1 second.
Sure.
All right? Okay, anything, Council, you're all set with your recommendation on regular course?
I believe so. I
Thank
can
you.
repeat that, or are you
I've
good?
got it. 32-18 has been given regular course with referral to the mayor, the assessor's office, treasurer, and the city solicitor. Thank you.
Mr. President?
Yes, sir. Go
I just
ahead.
want to disclose that on 3218, I do represent the landowner, and I'll be abstaining and not participating in that.
Okay, very good, thank you. I now yield the floor to Councilor David Cormier.
Yeah, just through you to the city clerk. Is that supposed to be Ways and Means, or is that legal affairs? I think that's ordinance. That's an ordinance.
How we've normally handled all these pay raises, anything like that, they go to Ways and Means the first time. When they come back as an ordinance, they go to Legal Affairs.
I gotcha.
At that
Oh, okay.
You good?
Yeah, I'm good.
Okay, all right, thank you. We're not, I'm sorry, Councilor Frida.
Through the chair, 3218, can we go back and also include planning?
I yield the floor to the chairman of the committee.
I don't mind. That's fine.
Okay, any other, you're all set on that? Okay, so again, for qualification on 32-18, excuse me, a second. Okay, so if we can, well, this is first time on, so let's get some clarification on 32-18 for a moment. The clerks informed me that we've already dealt with this, they just had the wrong name on it, is
We
that
had the
correct?
wrong name on the deed when we sent it to the city solicitor.
Is that the Karen Brewer one?
Yes.
So what
It's
we're
the
doing
same
is, it's
one.
re-petitioned, but we've already had the referrals out
Oh, I
originally, so we
see.
have recommendations
We
back
have
on it.
everything back, it's just when they
Yeah.
sent it back, they had the wrong name on the deed, they had
Can we,
Robert
can we
deed.
streamline this?
Yeah, I think probably just the city solicitor then
Yeah.
would be
Good
the only
idea.
one that's
Okay.
necessary, yep.
So 32-18 has been given regular course, and the only referral will be to the city solicitor at this point.
Correct.
Thank you very much, I appreciate that.
Yep.
Counselor Freed, thank you. We now move on to 33-18.
3318, Jean J. Mazzarella, changed the zoning of 8 lots of land from Residence B zoning district to the Commercial zoning district located along the north side of Mechanic Street and the south side of the unimproved portion of Glendale Street, and also the unimproved Milton Street, and adjacent portion of Glendale Street. All is shown on a plan entitled Plan to Accompany Petition for Zoning Change, Leominster, Mass., prepared for Dean J. Mazzarella, dated January 10th, 2018, by Whitman and Bingham Associates, LLC.
Petition 33-18 is referred to the Chairman of Legal Affairs.
Thank you, Mr. President. First time on the calendar, regular course, with a referral to the Planning Board, the Zoning Board of Appeals, the Building Inspector, the Assessor, the Treasurer, the Traffic Bureau of the Leominster Police Department. We also need to vote on a hearing date of March 26, 2018 at 6:45 PM. And I think at this point, we should also send the petitioner a letter that he needs to comply with the, well, we'll get into that later at this point. So just those
Right.
referrals at this point.
Okay, very
Yep.
good. Council's heard 33-18 is going regular course with referrals to the Planning Board, ZBA, Building Inspector, Assessor's Office, Treasurer's Office, Traffic, and the last one?
That was it.
That was it, okay, very good. And we have to establish a hearing on 3/26/18 at 6:45 PM. All those in favor of the hearing date, please indicate in the usual manner. Those opposed, by a vote of 9-0, the hearing has been established. 34-18, Madam Clerk.
3418, Middlesex Integrative Medicine Incorporated, grant a special permit for a registered marijuana cultivation site located at 25 Mohawk Drive.
34-18 is referred to the Chairman of Legal Affairs.
Thank you, Mr. President. Regular course with a referral to the Planning Board, the Zoning Board of Appeals, the Building Inspector, the Assessor, the Treasurer, the Traffic Bureau of the Leominster Police Department, and the Director of the Health Department. We also need to establish a hearing date of March 12th, 2018 at 6:45 PM.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. 34-18 has been given regular course with referral to the Planning Board, ZBA, excuse me, the Building Inspector, Assessor's Office, Traffic, and the Treasurer's Office. We also would like to notify the Health Director as well for input, and then we need to vote on a hearing to be established on the 12th of March at 6:45 PM. All those in favor of the hearing, please indicate in the usual manner. Those opposed, the hearing's been established with regular course. Madam Clerk, 35-18.
3518, Claire M. Frida, adopt moratorium for the city of Leominster regarding recreational marijuana until December 1st, 2018.
Petition 35-18 again is referred to the Chairman of Legal Affairs.
Thank you, Mr. President. First time on the calendar, regular course with a referral to the Mayor's Office, the Planning Board, the Building Inspector, the Zoning Board of Appeals, the Police, the Traffic, the Police Department, and Copeland and Page.
Mr. President, I have a point of order.
First, let me yield the floor to Counsel Bonanza.
Yeah, I double-checked this, this is strictly process, but I double-checked it with Mr. Riley today of Copeland and Page. Under 48, Section 5, a zoning amendment has to come either from the council, the planning board, the affected landowner, or 10 taxpayers. There's nothing wrong with Councilor Frida petitioning the council to petition the moratorium, but the moratorium is a zoning amendment subject to Chapter 48, Section 5. So I just want to be clear on the process. So what's really happening here is this petition is seeking the council, a positive vote of the council. Mr. Riley suggests that a majority vote alone is enough to have the council petition for the moratorium.
Okay, thank you for that, for sharing. Counsel Cormier?
Yeah, I'm just questioning why this is on the agenda in the first place. We've already taken a vote on a moratorium, and I believe the recommendation of the planning board was in the negative the last time we've went through this, so
Okay?
if I can get an explanation on why it's even on the agenda.
We can't do that at this moment. I understand the question you're asking, but we're not gonna get into a debate being first time on the calendar.
Okay.
Okay, so I respect that, but if you can just work with us on that. I'm gonna yield the floor back to the Chairman of Legal Affairs for consideration. Do you still want all of those boards involved, or do you just wanna work with Copeland and Page on that?
No, I want them all involved.
Okay, very good. So 35-18 is given regular course with referral to the mayor, the planning board, building inspector, ZBA, the police chief, and Copeland and Page. Thank you. We now move on to appointments. Doyle Field, Mark C. Bonanza. Madam Chair. Oh, you gotta read it first, go ahead.
Appointments, Doylefield Commission, Moxie Bedanza, term to expire April 15th, 2021.
That's one of those corrections. I'll yield the floor to the chairwoman of Ways and Means.
Thank you, Mr. President. First time on the agenda, regular course.
Thank you very much, we appreciate that. Regular course on that appointee.
Do we have a
We're now
resume?
we're now going to go to page 7. In matters before the city council for action and disposition, we're gonna move up Rodney Shafter for the Cultural Commission. Madam Chair of Ways and Means, are you ready to report?
I am. We have Mr. Shafter down here this evening. He has been, his appointment to the Cultural Commission, term to expire April 15th, 2021, his name has been sent down by the mayor. Mr. Shafter was highly recommended by two current members of the Leominster Cultural Council, also by two of our esteemed colleagues. He has lived in Leominster for 17, 18 years. He has a tremendous resume of graduate work and undergraduate work. He is a chemist. He has worked as a volunteer for the Boy Scouts and the library, the Pilgrim Church. He feels very strongly about the arts and the sciences, and I feel as though his contributions to this council will be many. So I certainly would recommend that his appointment be granted, and I will ask you that you poll my committee.
I will at that point. I'll yield the floor to Councilor Frida.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Dombrowski.
Yes.
Thank you. Madam Chair, you ready to report?
I am, Mr. President. We have a unanimous recommendation to grant the appointment of Rodney Shafter to the Cultural Commission with a term to expire April 15th, 2021.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Councilors heard that recommendation read for the confirmation of Mr. Shafter. Are there any questions or comments on the floor? If not, this will be a roll call vote, beginning with Councilor David Cormier.
Yay.
Councilor Pauline Cormier.
Yay.
Councilor Oettinger.
Yay.
Councilor Bonanza.
Yay.
Councilor Feckley.
Yay.
Councilor Shalfo Zephyr.
Yay.
Councilor Dombrowski.
Yay.
Councilor Frida.
Yay.
I shall be recorded as yay by a vote of 9-0. The confirmation has taken place. Thank you for serving. I think we need to also talk to you about the Water Commission with your background. We're now going to go back to the agenda on page 3. We have, let's see, right here. Okay, matters before the city council. We'll begin with Ways and Means. Communication 28. Is the chairwoman ready to report?
I am, Mr. President. Communication 28, Dean J. Mazzarella, Mayor, exempt Joseph Poirier, Jr., currently employed by the Department of Public Works from the Conflict of Interest Law as provided for in MGL Chapter 268A, Section 20B, as he will be taking a position with the city clerk's office for the setup and breakdown of election equipment. A couple of months ago, we had a similar communication, which we did grant. However, there has been some questions from Councilor Shalfo Zephyr. So actually, I will yield this to her and her questions and concerns.
If I may, before we're in committee, what is your committee report?
Okay. My report at this point would be to accept this, or to grant this communication, since we have done it in the past. I know that I talked to the city clerk. She said that this would be a situation where Mr. Poirier may or may not be needed. She just likes to have a list of people that she can call upon. I understand, and she will, my colleague to my left will be discussing it shortly. I understand her concerns, but I think at this point we should allow this and then look into another situation where people may be able to bid on jobs like this.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I yield the floor to the second member, Councilor Frida.
I agree, I support it.
Thank you. Third member, Councilor Dombrowski.
I agree with the chairwoman.
Okay, now yield the floor back to the chair.
Yes, so I guess we have a unanimous recommendation on this, so, but I still would like to have Council Shalfo-Zephyr discuss her concerns before we go forward on it.
Okay, I'll yield the floor to her. Go ahead.
Great, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
When this was first on our calendar, I got two calls from a couple of constituents who were concerned about, obviously this is, could potentially be a conflict of interest, and they misunderstood. They thought that this person would actually be working for their father, who is also a city employee. That is not the case, because I did clarify that with the city clerk. However, another question that was raised at that time was about process. That, is there a process in place so that municipal employees in Leominster, is there an opportunity to bid on these second kinds of jobs? So it's an opportunity for existing Leominster employees to earn some overtime and take on a second job. After a conversation with our HR director, and then also subsequently with the city clerk, there really isn't any kind of mechanism in place to allow anybody throughout the city to bid on these kinds of jobs. Is that fair, Lynn?
Through the chair.
Through the chair.
Like I explained to you, every couple of years, we just ask anybody that's interested to come sign a list.
Right.
It's basically send out an email.
Okay, so I'm happy, so anyway, so long story short, so I did ask for this communication to Lynn Bouchard, our clerk, dated October 14th, 2005, and this is about special municipal employees, and this is a communication from Brian Riley from Copeland and Page. So I think it's really important for everybody to give this a good read, and I think we need to do some updating, because the list of special municipal employees that are attached needs to be updated. So again, that, I guess, will go back to my Ways and Means, the chairperson seated to my right. So I'm fine with this, and I'm happy to go along with the committee's recommendation. And I would like to, I guess, through the chair to the Ways and Means chairperson, ask her to work on a process so that everybody, any municipal employee can have the opportunity, that there's a process in place so that those kinds of postings are distributed throughout the entire city.
Just for point of information, that's a human resource job, not a counselor. And that question will be referred to the human resource for response. That's where it starts from. She's the expert that has the legal information necessary in order for, and then what will happen is if she sends a petition down or a policy, if it's deemed a city council matter, then we'll take it through Ways and Means.
I think that's fine. Whoever does it is irrelevant to me, but I thought it originates with the Ways and Means chairperson, that it would make sense to come from her. So I'm fine. If the HR director, Ms. Hurley, wants to come up with the policy and the process and put that in place and communicate that, I'm perfectly happy with that.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments or questions on the communication 28? If not, this will be a yea or nay vote. All those in favor of the recommendation, please indicate in the usual manner. Those opposed, by a vote of 9-0, communication 28 has been granted. Madam Chair, 29-18, are you ready to report?
I am, Mr. President. 2918, Gail P. Feckley, designate the position of legal counsel to the City Council as a special municipal employee in accordance with MGL Chapter 268A, Section 1N. And at this point, Mr. President, I would ask for further time on this. I received some additional information this evening that I have not had the opportunity to go over, and I will ask you to poll my committee.
I yield the floor to Councilor Frida.
That's fine.
Okay, Councilor Dabrowski.
That's fine.
Very good. Your report, Madam Chair.
Yes, we have a unanimous recommendation, further time on 2918.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Council, sir, the recommendation read for further time on 29-18. Are there any comments or questions on the floor? If not, all those in favor of the recommendation, please indicate in the usual manner. Those opposed, by a vote of 9-0, further time has been awarded. Thank you, Madam Chair. We'll now move on to legal affairs. Communication 29, is the chairman ready to report?
I am, Mr. President. Communication 29, Dean J. Mazzarella, Mayor. Amend Chapter 13 by adding a new section 13-68.1 entitled Bicycle Lanes, and inserting the following streets designated for marked bicycle lanes. North Street, south side, from Lunenburg Town Line to 100 feet west of Main Street. North Street, north side, from 100 feet west of Main Street to Lunenburg Town Line. We had a subcommittee meeting on this matter. I believe the recommendation was to grant Communication 29. There was talk of a need to add the bicycle lanes on Merriam Avenue in the future. I do have a call into the Traffic Bureau, Officer Bresnahan. I just want to get the precise measurements and the precise language to do that, and get that submitted as a separate petition. But
Excellent.
the recommendation, I believe, is to grant Communication 29.
Okay, Council, sir, the recommendation to grant Communication 29, are there any comments or questions on the floor? If not, all those in favor of the recommendation, please indicate in the usual manner. Those opposed, by a vote of 9-0, Communication 29 is granted. We now move on to Communication 30. Is the chairman ready to report?
I am. Communication 30, Dean J. Mazzarella, Mayor. Amend Chapter 13,
Mr. President,
Section.
Yeah.
could I move to waive the reading?
Second.
I don't have a problem with that at all. We've
been-
been
it's been
dealing
read-
with this for a while here.
Yeah.
So I'll do a poll. Is there any objection to waiving the reading on the next, this one and another one, or just this one, Counselor?
Well, there's gonna be a few of them.
People leave on
Yeah.
these streets.
Well, if there's action being taken on it, I think we should read it. If there's no action, I don't have a problem with waiving it, if that's okay.
No, I think there's action.
There's
being
action
taken.
on it?
Yeah.
Okay, so let's, for the record, we're gonna read them into the record. So again, Communication 30, is the chairman ready to report?
I am. Communication
Thank you.
30. Nice try. Dean J. Mazzarella, Mayor. Amend Chapter 13, Section 13-77, entitled Stop Signs, to include the following: F&L Road against southbound drivers at North Street, Atlantic Avenue against northbound drivers at North Street, Primrose Avenue against southbound drivers at North Street, Lake Street against northbound drivers at North Street, Woodsum Avenue against southbound drivers at North Street, Morningside Street against northbound drivers at North Street, Sargent Avenue against southbound drivers at North Street, Cullen Avenue against northbound drivers at North Street, Stewart Avenue against southbound drivers at North Street, McKinley Street against northbound drivers at North Street, Amy Avenue against northbound drivers at North Street, Westminster Avenue against southbound drivers at North Street, Hobson Street against northbound drivers at North Street, Greenwich Avenue against southbound drivers at North Street, Schley Street against northbound drivers at North Street, Elmwood Avenue against southbound drivers at North Street. Again, we had a subcommittee meeting on this communication from the mayor. One thing that was brought up by the Ward 1 counselor is that some of these stop signs do not exist, so probably a good idea to get them up. So the recommendation was to grant Communication 30.
And that's a recommendation from the subcommittee meeting?
Yes.
Thank you. Council, sir, the recommendation read to grant Communication in 30 as stated. Are there any questions or comments on the floor? Council Frida.
Yeah, I think it's important to note that C-29 and C-30 are both directives from the DOT for the highway grant. This isn't, I mean, when it was in the paper the last time, somebody said, why are you spending money on bicycle lanes? I mean, I think it's important to note it's not us making that decision, it's the directive to get the grant, so.
Absolutely. It's a great
Stop
point.
signs are the same thing.
Thank you. It's a
Yeah.
great point.
No, that is a
Counselor
good point.
Dombrowski?
No, that is a good point. I thank the counselor for bringing that up.
Yep, thank you. Any other comments or questions on the floor on Communication 30? If not, I'm going to ask for a roll call vote on this, beginning with Councilor David Cormier.
Yay.
Councilor Pauline Cormier.
Yay.
Councilor Oettinger.
Yay.
Councilor Bonanza.
Yay.
Councilor Feckley.
Yay.
Councilor Shalfo Zephyr.
Yay.
Councilor Dabrowski.
Yay.
Councilor Frida.
Yay.
I shall be recorded as yea by a vote of 9-0. C-30 has been granted. We now move on to 14-A. Mr. Chairman, are you ready to report?
I am, Mr. President. Petition
President?
Yes.
I'm
1418.
gonna move
Hold
to
on
waive
one
the reading
second.
on this one.
Oh, okay.
I'm
That
gonna
quite-
get one of these sooner or later.
Okay.
There's no football game on tonight, is there?
No football game. However, this has been read earlier this evening, and it's not being acted upon.
Okay, so that's a request from the third member of Legal Affairs. Mr. Chairman, you have the floor.
Okay, petition 1418, we had a public hearing tonight. It was continued, and so the recommendation at this point is further time. And just in case anyone missed it earlier, This was continued to March 12th, 2018 at 7:00 PM.
Okay, thank you very much. Council, sir, the recommendation for further time of 14-18 with a continued hearing to take place on March 12th at 7 PM in the council chambers. Are there any questions or comments on the floor? If not, all those in favor of the recommendation, please indicate in the usual manner. Those opposed, further time has been granted. 18-18, is the chairman ready to report?
I am. Petition 18-18, David R. Cormier, install a stop sign on Queens Road against westbound drivers at Dogwood Road. We had a subcommittee meeting on this petition as well. I believe there's an issue of whether or not this is an accepted road. And I just defer this to Councilor Cormier, who's the author of the petition.
Okay,
for
before there's a
further information
recommendation, I
on
will
that.
yield the floor to the author for clarification.
Yeah, I think that there is a question on this particular one, so I thought we said we were gonna table it for study and talk to, try to get the consensus of the neighbors down there in the springtime.
Okay. So,
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cormier. So petition 1818, the recommendation is to table this for study.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Council, sir, the recommendation read for tabling 18-18. Are there any questions or comments on the floor? If not, all those in favor of the recommendation, please indicate in the usual manner. Those opposed, 18-18 has been tabled. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. 19-18, is the chairman ready to report?
Yes, 1918, David R. Cormier, place a stop sign on J Avenue against southbound drivers at Beth Avenue. I believe this is the same issue as petition 18-18, so we will similarly table this one for study as well.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Council, sir, the recommendation read to table 19-18. Are there any questions or comments on the floor? If not, all those in favor of the recommendation, please indicate in the usual manner. Those opposed, by a vote of 9-0, 19-18 has been tabled. Mr. Chairman, 20-18.
Yes, 20-18, David R. Cormier, place a stop sign on Beth Avenue against northbound drivers at Debbie Drive. We had also had a subcommittee meeting relative to this petition. At that time, two of the committee members, Councilor Bedanza and I, were in favor of granting petition 2018, and Councilor Frida at that time was unsure. I'm not sure if her position's changed. So
I yield the floor to Councilor Frida for consideration. No? Okay. Mr. Chairman, you have a report.
Okay, so the report is to, the majority is to grant petition 20-18.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Council, sir, the recommendation read to grant 20-18. Are there any comments or questions on the floor? If not, all those in favor of the recommendation, please indicate in the usual manner. Those opposed, by a vote of 8-1, 20-18 has been granted. Mr. Chairman, 21-18.
Thank you, Mr. President. Petition 2118, David R. Cormier. Amend Chapter 13, Section 13-66.6 entitled Senior Citizen Parking and repeal this section. Again, we had a subcommittee meeting on this petition, and I just want to note that the police chief was present at this subcommittee meeting for all of the petitions dealing with these issues. The recommendation is to grant petition 2118.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to yield the floor to the petitioner before he gets crushed with the misconception
Thank you.
that he's repealing senior citizen parking in the city.
Right, yeah,
So,
thank
go
you
ahead.
very
The
much
floor
for
is
that.
yours. You're welcome.
I was, obviously, I was going through this
You're
section of the ordinances, and I came across this. What happened is, I think this was passed by the city council back in 1976. At the time, the senior center was located down in the area of Mechanic and Water Street. So that's why this ordinance was in place back then, so that when the seniors were visiting the senior center down there, they had a place to park during the day between the hours of 8 and 5. That is no longer the case. That parking lot these days is used for multiple purposes, and the police chief was here that night and admitted that they haven't enforced this in years because it's irrelevant today. So that's the whole purpose of this.
I don't know if I'm going to go along with that. Kevin Cormier on Merriam Avenue is a senior citizen, and he loves to park there thinking it's senior citizen parking for Tim's Diner. Mr. Chairman, you have a report?
Yes, the recommendation was to grant petition 2118.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Councilors heard the recommendation read to grant 21-18. Are there any comments or questions on the floor? If not, all those in favor of the recommendation, please indicate in the usual manner. Those opposed, by vote of 9-0, 21-18 has been granted. Mr. Chairman, 22-18, are you ready to report?
I am. Thank you, Mr. President. Petition 22-18, David R. Cormier. Create a left turn prohibition on Albert Drive northwest bound to Central Street southbound. Again, we had a subcommittee meeting. The recommendation is to grant petition 22-18.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Councilors heard the recommendation read to grant 22-18. Are there any comments or questions on the floor? If not, all those in favor of the recommendation, please indicate in the usual manner. Those opposed, by vote of 9-0, 22-18 has been granted. Mr. Chairman, 23-18.
Thank you, Mr. President. Petition 23-18, David R. Cormier. Install a stop sign on Albert Drive against southwest bound drivers at Central Street. Again, we had a subcommittee meeting. The recommendation is to grant petition 23-18.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again, councilors heard the recommendation for a positive granting of 23-18. Are there any comments or questions on the floor? If not, all those in favor of the recommendation, please indicate in the usual manner. Those opposed, by vote of 9-0, 23-18's been granted. Mr. Chairman, 24-18.
Thank you, Mr. President. Petition 24-18, David R. Cormier. Install a yield sign facing drivers on Albert Drive heading northwest bound onto Central Street. Again, after a subcommittee meeting with the police chief present, the recommendation is to grant petition 24-18.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Councilors heard the recommendation read. Councilor Cormier, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. Mr. Chairman, we have a, it's dated January 25th, 2018, where Officer Bresnahan has indicated that the police department supports creating a left-hand turn prohibition against northwest-bound drivers on Albert Drive to Central Street in conjunction with a stop sign instead of a yield sign against northwest-bound traffic on Albert Drive. So at this point, yeah, he would rather a stop sign rather than the yield sign after he went out and inspected the intersection.
Okay, I didn't see that.
Yeah, so
All right.
if I may, at this point, I'd like to make a motion that we amend 24-18 to replace a yield sign with the word stop sign.
Do I have a second on that? Seconded by Councilor Feckley. Thank you. All those, are there any questions on the amendment? All those in favor of the amendment, please indicate in the usual manner. Those opposed, by a vote of 9-0, 24-18 has been amended. Mr. Chairman, are you ready to report?
Yes, petition 24-18, having received the new information from Officer Bresnahan, who is in charge of the Traffic Bureau at the Police Department, the recommendation would be to grant 24-18 as amended.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Councilors heard the recommendation read. Are there any comments or questions? If not, all those in favor of the recommendation, please indicate in the usual manner. Those opposed, by a vote of 9-0, 24-18 has been granted. Mr. Chairman,
yes.
Mr. Chairman, 25-18, are you ready to report?
I am. Thank you, Mr. President. Petition 25-18, David R. Cormier, amend Chapter 13, Section 13-79, entitled Yield Signs, to reflect the existing signs as follows. Litchfield Street facing drivers on the exit to Litchfield Street from Central Street northbound, and Litchfield Street facing drivers exiting Litchfield Street heading southbound on Central Street. Again, after meeting with the police chief at subcommittee, the recommendation is to grant petition 25-18.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Councilors heard the recommendation read on 25-18. Are there any comments or questions? If not, all those in favor of that recommendation, please indicate in the usual manner. Those opposed, by a vote of 9-0, 25-18 has been granted. Mr. Chairman, 26-18.
Thank you, Mr. President. Petition 26-18, David R. Cormier, amend Chapter 13, Section 13-77, entitled Stop Signs, by deleting the following. Tanzio Road against eastbound and westbound drivers at Aspinwall Avenue. Graham Street against east and westbound drivers at Central Street. Litchfield Street against southwestbound drivers at Central Street. Willard Street against northeastbound drivers at Lancaster Street. Viscaloid Avenue against southbound drivers at Lancaster Street. Whitney Street against northeast and southwestbound drivers at Mechanic Street. Whitney Street against northeast and southwestbound drivers at Water Street. Lindell Avenue against eastbound and westbound drivers at Merriam Avenue. Washington Street against northeast and southeastbound drivers at Merriam Avenue. Bel Air Heights against eastbound drivers at Old Mill Road. Aspinwall Avenue against northbound drivers at Malvern Street. Johnson Street, northwestbound entering Viscoloid Avenue. Johnson Street, southwestbound entering Viscoloid Avenue. Day Street against southwestbound drivers at Main Street. North Street against east and westbound drivers at Main Street. Mill Street against westbound drivers at Hawes Street. Mill Street against westbound drivers entering Hawes Street. Park Street against southbound drivers at Monument Square. River Street against northwestbound drivers at Hamilton Street. River Street against southeastbound drivers at Main Street. Nichols Street against northbound drivers at North Main Street. Lindell Avenue against eastbound drivers at North Main Street. Cross Street against westbound drivers at Central Street. Mr. President, as with the others, we met in subcommittee with the police chief, the Legal Affairs Committee, and several other counselors. The recommendation is to grant petition 2618 in its entirety.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Councilors heard a favorable recommendation to grant 2618. Are there any comments or questions on the floor? Councilor Cormier.
Thank you. I just want to point something out. Again, in the January 25th, 2018 recommendation from Officer Bresnahan regarding 26-18, the police department supports this petition with the exception of deleting the stop sign or a traffic control device against eastbound traffic on Bel Air Heights at Old Mill Road, as it is assumed that the traffic on Old Mill Road has the right of way. And when I saw this recommendation, I was in touch with the city clerk because I wanted to just point out to Officer Bresnahan that if you look in the in this section in the city's ordinances, there are actually two different entries for this intersection. One of them is against eastbound drivers, and the other one is at the same intersection against northeastbound drivers. And when I went out there and used my navigation system, the correct direction that you're facing in is northeastbound. So I figured if we delete what's been petitioned to delete, we will still have an entry on the books for a stop sign at that intersection, and the one that will remain is the correct direction of travel. So he did come in after he reviewed all of this, and he did amend his recommendation, and he does agree that we need to delete this one and let the other one remain. So I just
Do I have a
wanted
second on that motion?
Well, there's nothing, it's already correct.
Okay, thank you.
He just,
All right.
he needed clarification, and after he had clarification, he came back and corrected his recommendation.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay.
I appreciate that. Are there any comments or questions on the floor? Any others? Mr. Chairman, you're all set?
Yep.
Thank you. Councilors, for the recommendation to grant 26-18, all those in favor of the recommendation, please indicate in the usual manner. Those opposed, by a vote of 9-0, 26-18 has been granted. We now move on to page 6, 27-18. Is the chairman ready to report?
Yes, Mr. President. With respect to petition 2718, my notes indicate that the chief was going to get back to us on several of these. I did not get this January 25th letter. I don't know.
Right here, and
You
I
have
can
that,
tell you what
okay.
he said, yeah.
You didn't get that either? No, okay, so,
It was received by the city clerk on
Okay.
January 26th at 8:33 in the morning.
okay.
So, I can tell you what he said, if you want me
Through the
to.
chair, go ahead.
Okay,
Actually, I have the letter.
okay,
in
and
front of
this
me.
particular one, I think, is at the bottom, or on the second page.
Yeah. So he's talking regarding 2718. The police department supports this petition with the exception of the intersection of Samoset Drive and Candlewood Drive, intersection further from Willard Street where a four-way stop was created. Is he talking, I think he's talking about the
So,
last
the very,
three.
the very last bullet needs to be we need to amend this and delete the very last bullet, which reads Samoset Drive against southwest bound and northwest bound drivers at Candlewood Drive. That one needs to be deleted off the agenda, and everything else is good.
So that's the only one, the last line.
And
Just
they're
the
gonna-
last
And they're
one?
gonna remove the stop signs that are currently there upon passage of this.
So the second to last one is fine,
Yes.
going in the
Correct.
opposite direction?
Correct.
Mr.
Okay.
Chairman, you ready?
I am.
Thank you.
Okay, so I need a motion.
I'll move to delete Samoset Drive against southwest bound and northeast bound drivers at Candlewood Drive.
And I'll second that.
Been seconded by the petitioner. Any questions on that amendment? If not, all those in favor of the amendment, please indicate in the usual manner. Those opposed, petition 2718 has been amended. Is the chairman ready to report?
I am. Petition 2718, David R. Cormier, amend Chapter 13, Section 13-77 entitled Stop Signs to reflect the following existing stop signs. Bainbridge Street against southeastbound drivers at Willard Street, Graham Street against westbound drivers at Union Street, Gamache Lane against southbound drivers at Grant Street, DeChico Drive against northbound drivers at Union Street, Grant Street against eastbound drivers at Central Street, Research Drive against eastbound drivers at Central Street, Emerson Lane against northbound drivers at Holland Woods Road, Holland Woods Road against westbound drivers at Pleasant Street, Walden Court against northbound drivers at Holland Woods Road, Townsville Road against northeastbound drivers at Lancaster Street, Townsville Road against eastbound drivers at Malvern Street, Bel Air Heights against westbound drivers at Leggett Hill Road, Samoset Drive against southeastbound drivers at Willard Street, Spindle Top Drive against southwestbound drivers at Samoset Drive, Ballard Court against northwestbound drivers at Samoset Drive, Neelan Circle against southeastbound drivers at Samoset Drive, Candlewood Drive against northwestbound drivers at Neelan Circle, Candlewood Drive against eastbound drivers at Willard Street, Samoset Drive against northeastbound drivers at Candlewood Drive, intersection closest to Willard Street, and Candlewood Drive against southeastbound and northwestbound drivers at Samoset Drive. Again, we did meet in subcommittee with the chief of police. He indicated that he would get back to us on this, and he did get back to us, partially amending this. The recommendation is to grant petition 2718 as amended. I also want to thank and commend the Ward 3 Councilor, David Cormier. There's a lot of work involved in this.
Thank you very much. I just want
And I
to,
appreciate that.
I want to see who the next ward counselor is to take this on in their own ward. That's the challenge, huh? Yeah, maybe.
Well, since we do more than the allowed, maybe we should pass it off on them to work together.
So,
I think after this, that every single stop sign in Ward 3 will be, unless I miss something, will be legal. There'll be an ordinance for it.
No, that's good.
I think I
Fantastic.
got everything.
Nice work.
So again, the recommendation is to grant 2718 as amended.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Council has heard the recommendation to grant 2718. Are there any questions or comments on the floor? If not, all those in favor of the recommendation, please indicate in the usual manner. Those opposed by a vote of 9-0, 27-18 has been granted. Nice job, Counselor.
Thank you.
We now move on to Legal Affairs Continued on page 7, 30-18. Is the chairman ready to report?
I am. Petition 3018, Officer Patrick Bresnahan, request a stop sign be placed on Low Street for westbound traffic at the intersection with Hill Street. Again, like the others, we met in subcommittee, and the recommendation is to grant petition 3018.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Council has heard a favorable recommendation on 30-18 to grant. Are there any comments or questions on the floor? If not, all those in favor of the recommendation, please indicate in the usual manner. Those opposed, by a vote of 9-0, 30-18 has been granted. Excellent job, Mr. Chairman, with your committee. Thank you.
Thank you.
We now move on to financial report. Chairman of Finance, are you ready to report?
Yes, Mr. President. We started off the fiscal year in the stabilization fund with $14,517,000 $855 to date, with all petitions or communications granted or proposed. Those would total $3,897,220, which would leave a balance in the stabilization fund of $10,620,635. In addition to that, we had a question at a prior meeting about the open space fund. You should all have gotten a communication today from our treasurer, Mr. LaPlante, which reflects that there is currently a balance in that open space fund of $10,023.95. Total deposits to date, since the fund was established, were $43,023.95. There's been $33,000 spent from that account over the last 18 years. The lion's share of that was back in June of 2008. The city purchased, along with the state, an APR restriction on Powers Farm. That's land adjacent to Fallbrook Reservoir off of Wachusett Street for the sum of $25,000. And there were two other reductions, one in 2013, a $3,000 charge for open space and recreation plan consulting. And in June of 2014, appraisal of property for purchase of open space on the corner of Mechanic and Laurel Streets.
Thank
So
you
that's
very much.
information that was
We
requested.
appreciate that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We now move on to Communication 31. Is the chairman ready to report?
I am, Mr. President. C-31, relative to the appropriation of $6,000 of the parking meter salary and wages account, same to be transferred from the parking meter receipts reserved for appropriation account. Mr. LaPlante, the treasurer, examined this account and determined that there was a need for a transfer. This is self-sustaining. The parking meter salary account is fully funded from parking meter fees. And from time to time, money is transferred from the reserve from appropriations account to the appropriate line item to support the activity, which of course is the parking meter person. So it would be my recommendation to grant, and I'll check with my committee members.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield the floor to Councilor Pauline Cormier.
I agree.
Councilor David Cormier.
I agree as
Mr.
well.
Chairman, you ready to report?
Yes, a unanimous recommendation to grant C-31.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Council, sir, the recommendation to grant Communication 31. Are there any comments or questions on the floor? If not, all those in favor of the recommendation, please indicate in the usual manner. Those opposed, by a vote of 9-0, Communication 31 has been granted. Does the chairman have an order?
Yes, Mr. President, order that the sum of $6,000 be appropriated to the parking meter salary and wages account, same to be transferred from the parking meter receipts reserved for appropriation account. Move for the adoption of the order.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Council, sir, the recommendation read to move for the adoption of the order. Again, are there any questions or comments? If not, all those in favor of the recommendation, please indicate by saying yea.
Yea.
Those opposed, by a vote of 9-0, the order has been adopted. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Communication 32, are you ready to report?
Yes, Mr. President, relative to C-32, relative to the appropriation of $3,000 to the parking meter expense account, same to be transferred from the parking meter receipts reserved for appropriation account. Similar situation, this is another line item with respect to parking meters. This is for the actual update or maintenance of the equipment. Again, fully funded by the parking meter fees. And from time to time, the treasurer examines the account to make sure that there's enough to keep operations going. And that's a similar situation to the last communication. Would be my position to grant, and ask you to poll my committee,
I
please.
yield the floor to the clerk, Council Pauline Cormier.
I agree.
Third member, Council David Cormier.
I agree as well.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Mr. President, the recommendation is unanimous to grant C-32.
Council, sir, the recommendation read to grant Communication 32. Are there any questions or comments on the floor? If not, all those in favor of the recommendation, please indicate in the usual manner. Those opposed, by a vote of 9-0, the communication has been granted. Does the chairman have an order?
Yes, Mr. President, order that the sum of $3,000 be appropriated to the parking meter expense account, same to be transferred from the parking meter receipts reserved for appropriation account. Move for the adoption of the order.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Council, sir, the recommendation read. Are there any comments or questions? If not, all those in favor of the recommendation, please indicate by saying yea.
Yea.
Those opposed, by a vote of 9-0, the order's been adopted. Mr. Chairman, Communication 33, are you ready to report?
Yes, Mr. President, C-33, relative to the appropriation of $61,235 to the Gallagher Building Salary and Wages account, same to be transferred from the Gallagher Building Revolving Fund. This is for a craftsman who splits time between City Hall and the Gallagher Building. The salary for the craftsman is $51,235, and there's an allowance for overtime in the amount of $16,278. This is done annually, and the money for this particular position comes solely from that Gallagher Building revolving account, and it would be my position to grant C-33, and I'll ask you to poll my committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield the floor to the clerk, Councilor Pauline Cormier.
I agree.
Third member, Councilor David Cormier.
I concur.
Mr. Chairman.
The unanimous recommendation, Mr. President, is to grant C-33.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Council heard the recommendation read to grant communication 33. Are there any comments or questions on the floor? If not, all those in favor of the recommendation, please indicate in the usual manner. Those opposed, by a vote of 9 to nothing, the communication is granted. Does the chairman have an order?
Yes, Mr. President. Order that the sum of $61,235 be appropriated to the Gallagher Building Salary and Wages account, same to be transferred from the Gallagher Building Revolving Fund. Move for the adoption of the order.
Council heard the recommendation read. Are there any comments or questions? If not, all those in favor of the recommendation, please indicate by saying yea.
Yea.
Those opposed, by a vote of 9 to nothing, the order's been adopted. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Communication 34, you ready to report?
Yes, Mr. President. C-34, relative to the appropriation of $24,722 for the plumbing inspector salary and wages account, same to be transferred from the stabilization fund. We have a letter from the mayor dated January 18th, 2018. I respectfully request that an appropriation of $24,722 be made to the plumbing inspector salary and wages account, same to be transferred from the stabilization fund. The plumbing inspector retired, and as a result of the retirement, there was a vacation buyback in the amount of $6,261, sick leave buyback in the amount of $16,278, and there had to be some emergency coverage for the inspector position when the retirement occurred. That totaled $2,183 at the date of this particular letter, for a total of $24,722. Would be my position to grant. I'd ask you to poll my committee, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield the floor to the clerk, Councilor Pauline Cormier.
I agree.
Third member, Councilor David Cormier.
I concur.
Mr. Chairman, are you ready to report?
Yes, Mr. President, the recommendation of finance is unanimous to grant C-34.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Council heard the recommendation read to grant communication, excuse me. Communication 34. Are there any questions or comments on the floor? Councilor Frida.
Yeah, just a comment. I just want to wish the plumbing inspector well. I mean, Jim and Pressure has been around the city for a long time. His father before him. I think they've helped a lot of people, and they've been a good representative of the community. So I just wanted to make that statement, and I think he's done a great job.
Thank you, Councilor Frida. Any other comments or questions on the floor? If not, all those in favor of the recommendation to grant communication 34, please indicate in the usual manner. Those opposed, by a vote of 9 to nothing, communication 34 has been granted. Is the chairman ready for the order?
Yes, Mr. President. Order that the sum of $24,722 be appropriated to the plumbing inspector salary and wages account, same to be transferred from the stabilization fund. Move for the adoption of the order.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Council heard the recommendation read to move for the adoption of the order on communication 34. Are there any comments or questions on the floor? If not, all those in favor of the recommendation, please indicate by saying yea.
Yea.
Those opposed, by a vote of 9 to nothing, the communication's been adopted. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and we'll now move on to communication 35. Are you ready to report?
Yes, Mr. President. C-35, relative to the appropriation of $9,012 to the building inspector salary and wages account, same to be transferred from the stabilization fund. This involves the retirement of the City Hall custodian. There's a vacation buyback in connection with that retirement of $9,012, which was not previously budgeted, and that is the purpose of this particular communication. And I would favor granting C-35 and ask you to poll my committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield the floor to Councilor Pauline Cormier, the clerk.
I'm in agreement.
Councilor David Cormier, third member.
I concur as well.
Mr. Chairman.
Unanimous recommendation, Mr. President, is to grant C-35.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Council heard the recommendation to grant communication 35. Are there any comments or questions on the floor? If not, all those in favor of the recommendation, please indicate in the usual manner. Those opposed, by a vote of 9 to nothing, the communication has been granted. Does the chairman have an order?
Yes, Mr. President. Order that the sum of $9,012 be appropriated to the building inspector salary and wages account, same to be transferred from the stabilization fund. Move for the adoption of the order.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Councilors heard the recommendation read. Are there any comments or questions on the floor? If not, all those in favor of the recommendation, please indicate by saying yea.
Yay.
Yay.
Those opposed, by a vote of 9 to nothing, the order's been adopted. Where are we here, right?
C-36.
Last one? Okay. We now move on to Communication 36, last matter before finance. Is the chairman ready to report?
Yes, Mr. President. C-36, relative to the appropriation of $150,000 to the police department overtime account, same to be transferred from the stabilization fund. When this was on the calendar for the first time, we gave a referral to the police chief for some explanation, and we did get pretty immediately an email back from Interim Chief Goldman. He indicates we have 3 officers on long-term injured on duty status. We have 2 officers on administrative leave. 5 officers are still in the field training, and 4 are in the academy. We are effectively working with 57 officers out of 74. Out of the 74 we should have, overtime is the only way we are fielding any officers on the street. So it's a situation that they've been trying to play catch-up with over there, and that's his explanation as to the communication. It would be my position to grant C-36, and I'll ask you, Mr. President, to poll my committee members.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First of all, Councilor Pauline Cormier, the clerk.
I agree.
Thank you. Third member, Councilor David Cormier.
I concur.
Mr. Chairman, you ready to report?
I am. The unanimous recommendation, Mr. President, is to grant C-36.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and committee. The recommendation is to grant Communication 36. Are there any comments or questions on the floor? If not, all those in favor of the recommendation, please indicate in the usual manner. Those opposed, by a vote of 9 to nothing, the communication has been granted. Does your chairman have an order?
Yes, Mr. President, in order that the sum of $150,000 be appropriated to the police department overtime account, same to be transferred from the stabilization fund. Move for the adoption of the order.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Councilors heard the recommendation read to move for the adoption of the order. Are there any questions or comments on the floor? If not, all those in favor of the recommendation, please indicate by saying yea.
Yay.
Those opposed, by a vote of 9 to nothing, the order's been adopted. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and the members of Finance. We took care of the appointment earlier in the meeting. Thank you, Madam Chairwoman of Ways and Means. Are there any items under old business that anyone would like to bring up at this point? Councilor Shalfo-Zephyr, you have the floor.
I do, thank you very much. Through the chair to the finance chair, I wanted to go back to C-38. This is a request for an appropriation of $75,000 to the police and fire indemnification expense account, seem to be
Yes.
transferred from stabilization. Could you get some backup detail on that?
Yes, I will.
We don't have anything, so I'd like to know specifically what it's for, and then why is it coming out of stabilization? Why wouldn't it be in the line item budget for police and fire?
I'll get answers to both of those questions.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anything else, Councilor?
I do, as a matter of fact. When we had a conversation earlier about the appointment of the special employee, which was C-28, and the conversation that we had after that was that in terms of developing a policy or developing a plan for posting jobs so that everybody in the city has the opportunity to bid on those jobs, but we actually, as a city council, cannot give instruction or direction to a department head. So what I would ask through the chair to the city clerk is if she would write a letter to the mayor asking him to ask the HR director, because he's her direct supervisor, if she would craft a policy and a process so that everybody throughout the city has the opportunity to bid on those second jobs.
Excellent idea.
Thank you.
Anything else?
No.
Okay. Anyone else have anything under old business? Councilor Frida, you have the floor.
Yeah, just through the chair to the finance chair. Do you have any idea on free cash yet?
I haven't had an updated conversation with the comptroller since our last meeting, but I will renew the question for our next meeting.
We should be close, I would hope.
Well, last time we checked, he was waiting for the schools to be closed out, and he wouldn't speculate when that was going to be. I suspect his position may be the same unless something's developed since I talked to him last.
Go ahead, you have the floor.
I'd like to check, I think it would be with Charlie Coggins, or, we have a house that we purchased, the DeShano house next to,
Right.
and we've had fires, and that house is sitting vacant. What's the liability if we were to use that property to house people in an emergency?
Okay. So first of all, is our understanding that that is under the emergency management?
Right.
Okay, so what we'll do is we'll contact Charlie and ask him what the status is on the building and also that question, which is an excellent
I
question.
know there's discussion about tearing it down for parking, but
Right.
it's a pretty solid building. I mean,
Right.
it'd be kind of a shame if we could use it
Okay.
when, you know, when there's a fire and an emergency.
What we can do, why don't we ask Charlie that question and see if maybe he wants to respond to it or even come down here in the near future to explain what's happening with that property. Does that work? Okay, thank you. Anything else under old business? If not, we'll move on to page 8. Under new business, we have a resolution. Ways and Means, correct? Chairwoman of Ways and Means, ready to report.
I am, Mr. President. Resolution Sawtell Road to accept public way and to authorize mayor to acquire title to real property. So this is first time on the agenda for the resolution, so regular course.
All right. So regular course on the resolution. Thank you. Any other items under new business?
Mr. President.
Counselor, go ahead.
Once again, that relates to the prior petition that I abstained on. I just want to make that clear.
Okay, so on the record this evening, Counsel Bonanza will be abstaining from the resolution and also the petition regarding this particular concept here.
3218.
Thank you, 3218, thank you. Any other items under new business? Okay, community calendar. Do we have any subcommittee meetings that need to be established? Counselor Feckley, you have the floor.
Yes, Mr. President, we have rescheduled the canceled Ways and Means Subcommittee from last week due to the snowstorm to Thursday, February 15th at 5 p.m.
Excellent. Excellent job moving forward.
Thank you.
Any other items as far as community calendar, events happening, activities? If not, do I have a motion to adjourn? Seconded, all those in favor? Thank you very much, have a great night.
Thank you. Feel better.
Nice.
I've got about 102 fever, so I'm like burning up.